Welcome back to Insanity Collection. In today's video, we will be looking at the top 5 most chilling mental hospitals in history. Think of all the horror movies you've seen, and then imagine all those movies being real. The 5 asylums we will be taking a look at in this video are infamous for their reported paranormal activities and chilling horror stories. Let's jump right in to the world of the insane. Number 5. GONJIAM Mental Hospital. GONJIAM Mental Hospital was opened in 1992 and was closed in merely 4 years later, in 1996. It became fully operational in 1995 with doctors, nurses, patients, and their treatments. Legend has it that the facility was built by a clinically insane man. The news of this facility lingers on in the memory of the neighbors. The hospital is located in the small city of Gwangju. The 2-story building has every element a building needs to frighten anyone. During its time open, locals reported that the patients of the hospital began dying of mysterious deaths. The deaths were believed to be the result of the mistreatment by the owner of the hospital. When the families of the deceased and the government decided to investigate the facility, the owner quickly fled the country. This eventually led to the closure of the facility. Some claim that the facility closed due to sewage issues, but let's be honest, that sounds a bit like propaganda. Either way, whatever the case may be, the facility rightfully landed on CNN's list of 10 freakiest places around the world. And while the eerie facility has been abandoned for the past 25 years, locals still claim to hear people doing the dishes at night. To top it all off, the 3rd most successful movie in Korea, GONJIAM Haunted Asylum, is based on this facility. It doesn't get any scarier than that, does it? Number 4. TRANS-ALLEGHENY Lunatic Asylum. Now regarded as a National Historic Landmark, the TRANS-ALLEGHENY Lunatic Asylum served as a sanctuary for the mentally ill beginning in the mid-1800s. Built during the Civil War era, the asylum was designed by Baltimore architect Richard Snowden Andrews, who used Gothic Revival and Tudor Revival architectural styles for the building. The asylum's main building is said to be one of the largest hand-cut stone masonry buildings in the USA, and the 2nd largest hand-cut sandstone building in the world, behind only the Moscow Kremlin. The building was constructed in West Virginia, and following the admission of West Virginia as a U.S. state, it was renamed the West Virginia Hospital for the Insane, with its first patients admitted in October 1864. The asylum was meant to be self-sufficient, including its farm, dairy, waterworks, and cemetery. The maximum number of patients the asylum was intended to house was 250. But with the increasing rise in people who were considered to be mentally ill individuals, the patients' number rose to 717 in 1880, 1661 in 1938, 1,800 in 1949, and 2,600 in the 1950s, making the asylum dramatically overcrowded. It also didn't help that, according to the report of a survey carried out by a North American medical organization in 1938, it was discovered that the asylum not only housed the mentally ill, but also alcoholics, epileptics, drug addicts, and non-educable mental defectives. Apart from the overcrowding, the workers in the asylum were known for the profound abuse of their patients, which included locking them in cages, lobotomizing, chaining them, and even neglecting some of the patients. All of this led to the loss of tens of thousands of patients' lives. One of the most deranged patients in the asylum at the time was a woman named Ruth. She was known for attacking anybody that visited the asylum. After her death, the workers in the asylum claimed to have heard a voice saying, "Get out," which they believed to belong to the late patient. For a brief amount of time, the asylum was used as a Civil War military base, and since the base was shut down, thousands of people have claimed to have seen and heard ghost soldiers, even to this day. In 2007, the hospital was bought by Joe Jordan and opened for tours and events to raise money for its restoration. As expected, with the restoration has come more haunting and paranormal experiences. Number 3. Danvers State Hospital. Also known as the Danvers Lunatic Asylum, the hospital is located in Danvers, Massachusetts, and was built in 1874 and finally opened in 1878. The asylum was built under the supervision of Boston architect Nathaniel Jeremiah Bradley and has been used occasionally over the years as a prison. The complete construction of the hospital cost about $1.5 million, and it originally featured 2 main center buildings, housing the administration block and 4 wings on each side of the administration block. The building also included a kitchen, laundry, chapel, and dormitories, and over the years, newer buildings were added to the already gigantic structure. The whole building sat on a system of labyrinth-like tunnels, which were intended for the use of the male and female nurses in getting to their homes. Just like many other mental asylums at the time, the Danvers State Hospital was not meant to house a large number of patients. The building was designed to only contain 500, but with the addition of alcoholics and regular felons, that number skyrocketed to 2,000 patients by the late 1940s. Apart from providing treatment and care for the mentally ill, the hospital's function was broadened to include a training program for nurses and a pathological research laboratory. To keep the patients in check, the nurses and doctors employed various inhumane treatments like shock therapies, lobotomies, drugs, and straitjackets. To make things even worse, the hospital was understaffed, leading to the death of many patients, some of which were not discovered until days later. Chillingly enough, the Danvers State Hospital is referred to by many as the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy, which has, of course, added to the already creepy undertone of the asylum, with many claiming to have heard screams of dead patients in anguish. The Danvers State Hospital was so creepy, in fact, that it made the perfect setting for the 2001 demon movie, Session 9. The hospital was eventually closed down and demolished in 2007, with all its patients either transferred to the community or other facilities. Number 2. LIER Hospital. Originally known as LIER Asylum and LIER Psychiatric Hospital, the hospital is located in LIER, Norway, and was built in 1921 and opened in 1926. The hospital was built when the counties of Buskerud and Vestfold decided to build a mental facility and was designed by Norwegian architect Victor Norden. The hospital originally consisted of a total of 12 buildings, but over the years, more of the buildings were shut down. Apart from the patients' block, 2 larger buildings were built for the financial activities, laundry, a caretaker's house, and a mortuary. The building was designed to contain 552 patients, but in the 1940s, the patients increased to 600, all with mental disorders. In 1985, 4 buildings were closed. The reason given was that there was no longer a need for all 600 beds. The ill treatment of patients started in 1945, when patients were subjected to take LSD, a powerful synthetic psychedelic drug, which confused them. That was not all, however, as inhumane treatments such as lobotomies and other cruel procedures were carried out on the patients as well. This hospital was known for testing new drugs on their patients, drugs that industries couldn't test. There were numerous deaths of patients during ECT treatments and various experiments of radioactive isotopes on some unfortunate patients in the hospital. Former nurses of the facility have, on various occasions, talked about the vicious conditions for the inmates, such as isolation, straitjackets, and prolonged use of belts. Doctors who worked at this facility say that their entire worldview changed as a result of the craziness and cruelty that they encountered while working there. Number 1. Willow Brook State School. Located in the Willow Brook neighborhood in New York City, USA, it started operating in 1947, and as of 1965, it was regarded as the biggest state-run institution for people with mental disabilities in the United States. In 1938, there were plans to build a children's facility for intellectually disabled kids, but when it was completed in 1942, it was turned into a United States Army hospital. The hospital was named Halloran General Hospital after the late Colonel Paul Stacy Halloran. In 1947, the New York State Department of Mental Hygiene obtained the facility as earlier planned and named it Willow Brook State School. After this, the horrible series of inhumane acts began. The outbreak of the virus hepatitis A at the school led to some of the most unethical medical research the world has ever seen. It was done by Saul Krugman and Robert W. McCollum. At that time, nobody knew the cause of the virus and its mode of transmission. The medical staff at the school consulted Krugman, who observed that most of the kids admitted to the school had the virus, and he subjected 60 healthy children to feed on the live hepatitis virus from other children's stool samples. The research was abruptly stopped when the public found out and derided such an inhuman act. The facility had the capacity of 4,000 mentally disabled kids, but as of the mid-1960s, the facility was housing 6,200. When Senator Robert F. Kennedy was in the building on a tour, he said he had visited the state institutions for the mentally retarded, and he regarded Willow Brook as a snake pit. His warnings fell on deaf ears, however, as no improvements happened at the school. It was in 1972 that the atrocities happening in the school were exposed by Geraldo Rivera of WABC-TV. These atrocities included overcrowding, physical and sexual abuse of the kids by members of the school's staff, and inadequate sanitary facilities. In 1975, a consent judgment commanded New York State to improve the conditions of the school. The alumni of the school, who are alive today, are still suffering from the unfortunate mistreatment that they went through. What are your thoughts on these 5 absolutely chilling mental asylums? If you want to see more dark and mysterious content from Insanity Collection, make sure to tap on one of the videos on your screen now. Until next time, my friends, stay insane.